The phone vibrated against Liam Foster's thigh as he rushed through the hospital corridor. His mother's oncologist, again. His fingers trembled as he answered. "Mr. Foster, we need to discuss your mother's latest results." Liam leaned against the cold wall, his scrubs still stained from his last patient. "How bad?" "The cancer has spread. Without immediate treatment." Dr. Sanders paused. We're looking at weeks, maybe a month." The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Liam slid down to the floor. "The experimental treatment we discussed, $200,000. I'm sorry, but insurance won't cover it." After the call, Liam sat in his car, scrolling through job listings on his phone. His eyes caught on a post that seemed too good to be true. Private nurse needed. Experience in coma patient care. Competitive salary. Immediate start. Blackwell Estate. The Blackwells. Everyone knew about them. Old money. The type of wealth that could solve all his problems with a single paycheck. 20 minutes later, Liam sat in his cramped apartment, staring at his nursing credentials. With trembling hands, he opened his laptop and began the forgery. Just enough to make himself appear more qualified. Just enough to get through the door. The Blackwell mansion loomed before him the next morning, its Gothic architecture casting long shadows across the manicured lawn. Ivy Blackwell answered the door herself, her sharp features matching her reputation. "Mr. Foster." Her handshake was firm, calculated. "Follow me." The interview took place in a study that smelled of old leather and money. Ivy's questions were precise, probing. "Your experience with coma patients is impressive," she said, examining his doctored credentials. Liam maintained eye contact, his heart pounding. "I've dedicated my career to it." "And why leave your previous position?" "I believe I can make a greater difference in private care." Ivy's eyes narrowed slightly, but she nodded. "Let me show you where you'll be working." The tour led them through winding corridors to James Blackwell's suite. Medical equipment hummed quietly, monitoring the still figure in the bed. James looked smaller than in the photos Liam had seen in the news, his skin pale against the white sheets. "The protocols are strict," Ivy said, handing him a thick binder. "Everything must be documented. Every medication, every change in vitals, every visitor." Liam scanned the first page. The salary listed at the bottom made his hands shake. "When can you start?" "Tomorrow," Liam said, perhaps too quickly. After Ivy left, Liam stood alone with James Blackwell. The steady beep of the heart monitor filled the silence. He approached the bed, studying the man whose life he would be responsible for. "I'm sorry," he whispered, though he wasn't sure if he was apologizing to James or to himself. The machines continued their rhythmic beeping as the sun set outside, casting long shadows across James's unmoving face. Liam checked his phone, another missed call from the hospital. His mother's time was running out, and he had just made a deal with the devil. The night shift at the Blackwell mansion felt endless. At 2 a.m., Liam checked James's vitals for the third time, more to keep himself awake than out of necessity. The old house creaked and groaned around him, settling into its foundations like a restless sleeper. A crash from downstairs made him jump. Following the sound, he found Garrett Blackwell sprawled in the kitchen, an empty bottle rolling across the marble floor. "Shit," Garrett slurred, trying to stand. "You must be the new babysitter." Liam helped him up, noting the dilated pupils and trembling hands. "You should get some rest, Mr. Blackwell." "Garrett, Mr. Blackwell's the vegetable upstairs." He laughed bitterly, then swayed. "Sorry, that was fucked up." As Liam guided him to a chair, his eyes caught on a collection of photographs on the kitchen wall. The Blackwell family through the years, James younger, smiling, his arms around two children. Ivy, straight-backed even as a teenager. Garrett, once bright-eyed and clean-cut. "Mrs. Peterson?" Liam called out softly, remembering the housekeeper's name. She appeared almost instantly, as if she'd been hovering nearby. "I heard the noise. Young Mr. Blackwell having another episode." "I'm right here," Garrett mumbled. The housekeeper's face softened. "Been this way since the accident. Poor boy never recovered from seeing his father like that." "The car crash?" Liam asked. Mrs. Peterson glanced around before lowering her voice. "Nay, strange thing. That accident. Mr. Blackwell was always such a careful driver. And on that particular road." "That's enough, Mrs. Peterson." Ivy stood in the doorway, her silk robe immaculate despite the hour. She held a small leather case that Liam recognized as a medication kit. "I'll handle my father's evening medications," she said, her tone leaving no room for discussion. Liam frowned. "The chart indicates they were already administered at 8. I've made some adjustments to his regime." She pulled out a syringe with practiced ease. "I trust you can handle my brother." Before Liam could protest, his phone buzzed. The hospital again. He stepped into the hallway to answer. "Mr. Foster, your mother's had a significant decline," the night nurse said. "The doctors recommend starting the paperwork for hospice care." The world tilted sideways. Liam steadied himself against the wall. No hospice. I'll have the money soon. First payment comes tomorrow." When he returned to James's room, Ivy was finishing the injection. She documented nothing in the charts. Later that night, reviewing security footage became Liam's new obsession. The cameras were everywhere, hallways, rooms, even pointing directly at James's bed. One screen showed Ivy in her study, still awake, watching the same feed. His first payment arrived at dawn, more money than he'd ever seen at once. As he initiated the transfer to the hospital, a security alert flashed on his phone. "New camera detected in master bedroom." Liam looked up at the barely visible lens in the corner, its red light blinking like a tiny, watchful eye. The money would save his mother, but at what cost? And what exactly had he walked into? "The night shift's almost over," Mrs. Peterson said, appearing with coffee. "Though in this house, sometimes the real darkness doesn't lift with the sun." Liam watched through the medication room's glass partition as Ivy altered her father's prescriptions. Her movements were quick, practiced, someone used to not being questioned. "These dosages," he said when she emerged, "they're significantly higher than Dr. Harrison prescribed." Ivy's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Dr. Harrison is no longer my father's physician. I've consulted with specialists. I'll need to see that documentation for the medical log." "Of course," she adjusted her blazer. "I'll have it sent to you." The local pharmacy was Liam's next stop. The pharmacist, an older man named Ted, pulled him aside as soon as he presented the prescriptions. "Third change this month," Ted muttered, glancing at the papers. "Hey, Miss Blackwell's got quite the interest in her father's medication routine." Liam leaned closer. "What do you mean?" "Started right after the accident. Always adjusting. Always—" Ted stopped abruptly, looking over Liam's shoulder. Garrett stood there, swaying slightly but more lucid than usual. "Need a word with the new nurse." They walked to a nearby coffee shop, Garrett checking over his shoulder every few steps. His hands shook as he stirred sugar into his cup. "My sister's killing him," Garrett said quietly, slowly, carefully. "That's a serious accusation." "You've seen the medication changes, the constant monitoring." Garrett's eyes darted around. "She has cameras everywhere now, even in the staff bathrooms. Why would she—" "Money. Control. Pick one." He pulled out his phone, showing Liam a photo of an altered medical journal. Found this in her study. She's documenting everything like some sick experiment." Back at the mansion, Liam observed James's vital signs fluctuating in patterns that didn't match his baseline. On the security feed, Ivy sat in her study, multiple screens showing different angles of her father's room. Liam tried calling Dr. Harrison's office again. Like his previous attempts, the call went straight to voicemail. "Mr. Foster." He turned to find Ivy in the doorway, trying to reach old contacts. Her voice was silk over steel. "Dr. Harrison retired quite suddenly. Moved abroad, I believe. I was just—" "Let me be clear." She stepped closer. "My father's care is proceeding exactly as it should. It would be unfortunate if someone with questionable credentials were to interfere." The threat hung in the air between them. Later that night, during his regular checks, Liam noticed something unusual on James's heart monitor, a pattern that suggested possible conscious response to stimuli. "Did you see that?" he whispered to the night nurse. She shook her head. "See what?" "The readings. They showed—" "I wouldn't look too closely at those readings if I were you," she interrupted, her eyes darting to the camera. "Some things in this house, it's better not to notice." As if on cue, the red light of the camera blinked, and somewhere in the mansion, Ivy watched. The sound of retching led Liam to the second-floor bathroom. He found Garrett convulsing on the marble floor, empty pill bottles scattered around him. "Jesus Christ!" Liam checked his pulse, thready but present. "Garrett, can you hear me?" No response. White foam gathered at the corners of Garrett's mouth. Liam couldn't call an ambulance, not with what Garrett had told him, not with Ivy's surveillance. He ran to get his medical bag. 3 minutes later, he administered Narcan, praying it would work. Garrett's eyes flew open as he gasped for air. "Don't!" Garrett grabbed Liam's arm weakly. "Don't tell her. You need a hospital. She'll use it against me. Like everything else." Garrett's eyes cleared slightly. "The car. I saw her that day." "What day?" "Before Dad's accident. She was under his car, doing something." His voice dropped to a whisper. "The brake lines." Liam helped Garrett to his room, mind racing. Once Garrett was asleep, he made his way to James's study. The security footage showed Ivy in her room, distracted by a phone call. The office smelled of leather and cigars. Liam rifled through the drawers, finding insurance documents, medical reports, and, hidden behind a false panel, a stack of papers detailing suspicious financial transactions. A floorboard creaked behind him. "Looking for something specific?" Ivy stood in the doorway, her shadow long across the floor. "I was checking Mr. Blackwell's medical history. In his desk drawer, behind a hidden panel?" She stepped closer. "How thorough of you. Almost as thorough as someone who forged their specialized care credentials." Liam's blood ran cold. "Oh yes, I know," she smiled. "I knew before I hired you. Desperate people are so manageable. I'll report what you're doing to your father." "With what proof? Your word against mine? A nurse who lied about his qualifications?" She picked up one of the documents he'd found. "Chew? Who stole private documents?" From down the hall came a sound that stopped them both. A long, low moan from James's room. They rushed to find James's hand twitching, his eyes moving rapidly under closed lids. "He's responding," Liam said. "He's having a seizure," Ivy cut in smoothly. "A common occurrence in his condition, nothing more." But Liam had seen it. Recognition, awareness, something deeper than involuntary movement. James Blackwell was in there, trapped in his own body, while his daughter slowly poisoned him. "Get out!" Ivy commanded. "Your shift ended 10 minutes ago." In the parking lot, Liam sat in his car, hands shaking. On his phone, he pulled up his mother's medical bills, then the photos he'd managed to take of the suspicious documents. The choice before him was impossible: expose the truth and lose everything, or remain silent and be complicit in whatever Ivy was planning. Inside the mansion, James Blackwell's monitors beeped steadily, while security cameras recorded every movement, every breath, every secret trying to claw its way to the surface. At 3 in the morning, when even Ivy's vigilance wavered, Liam conducted his test. He leaned close to James's ear, whispering, "Squeeze my hand once for yes, twice for no. Are you aware?" Seconds ticked by. Then, so subtle it could have been missed, a single squeeze. Liam's heart raced. Again, "Are you in pain?" 2 squeezes. "Does Ivy?" The door creaked. Liam straightened quickly, pretending to check vitals as a night nurse entered. "Dr. Morrison's office returned your call," she said. "Eh? They won't discuss the case without Miss Blackwell's authorization." His phone buzzed. The hospital. He stepped into the hallway to answer. "Mr. Foster," his mother's doctor said. "The cancer has spread to her liver, without immediate intervention." "How much time?" "Days, maybe a week." Liam ended the call, legs weak. Through the window, he could see Ivy's office light still on, her silhouette moving between monitors. The Blackwell family safe wasn't hard to find, hidden behind a painting in the study, just like in every cliché movie. The combination took longer, but Garrett's birthday worked. Inside, beneath stacks of documents, lay bundles of cash. Liam's hands shook as he counted out what he needed, just enough for his mother's first treatment. He'd return it with his next paycheck. The safe's contents are inventoried daily. He whirled to find Mrs. Peterson in the doorway. "I won't say anything," she said softly, "but she'll know." That afternoon, Ivy called him to her office. On her desk lay printed results of James's latest test. "His readings are improving," Liam said. "These," she dropped them into a shredder. "These were incorrect. The new results show decline. You can't just—" "I can do whatever's necessary." She slid new papers across the desk. "These are the official results. This is illegal, like stealing from the family safe." Before he could respond, Garrett appeared in the doorway, looking unusually clear-eyed. "We need to talk," he said to Liam. "About Dad." In Garrett's room, away from cameras, he pulled out his phone. "I've been gathering evidence, bank statements, medical records, footage from the day of the accident." "Why show me?" Because she's going to kill him. Soon? Garrett's hands trembled. And you're the only one who can help me stop her. Liam's phone buzzed again. His mother's nurse. Your mother's asking for you, she said. You should come now. When he returned to James's room, Ivy was changing his IV bag. I'm terminating your employment, she said without looking up. Effective immediately. You can't. I can. And I will. She finally met his eyes. Unless you want the police to know about the theft, and the forged credentials, and your unauthorized medical tests on my father. Through the window, storm clouds gathered. In his pocket, Liam's phone buzzed again with another hospital call. Above them, the security camera's red light blinked steadily, recording everything, revealing nothing. The mechanic's shop sat on the outskirts of town, a rusted sign swinging in the wind. Inside, Mike Chen wiped his hands on a rag, eyes darting between Liam and the door. The Blackwell car, Mike's voice dropped. Man, I tried to forget about that one. You worked on it before the accident. Week before, Miss Blackwell brought it in for a routine check. He made air quotes. Nothing routine about what I found after? Which was? Mike glanced around his empty shop. Brake lines had been tampered with. Professional job, but definitely tampered. I documented everything. Took pictures. You have proof. Had proof. He pulled out his phone, showing Liam a series of threatening texts, until she made it clear what would happen if those pictures ever surfaced. Back at the mansion, Liam found Ivy reviewing security footage in her study. Interesting morning? She asked without looking up. The auto shop's quite far from your usual route. Just car trouble. Mike Chen's a chatty mechanic, isn't he? Now she met his gaze. I do hope you're not wasting his time with ancient history. In James's room, the vital signs showed another decline. Too perfect, too precise of a downturn. He's being poisoned, Garrett said from the doorway, his voice steady for once. I found her research. She's calculated everything. Dosage, timing, deterioration rate. We need a lawyer. Already tried. She's got them all in her pocket. He handed Liam a thumb drive. But I've been building a case. Everything's here. Before Liam could take it, Ivy's voice cut through the room. Building a case against your own sister, Garrett? She stood in the doorway, elegant as ever, but her eyes were hard as steel. It's over, Ivy, Garrett said. I remember the day of the accident. I saw you under Dad's car. Did you? Or is this another drug-induced fantasy? She pulled out her phone. Should I call your rehab center? I'm sure they'd be interested in your recent activities. I'm clean. Are you? Because these security feeds suggest otherwise. Liam started toward the door. I'm calling the police. With what evidence? Ivy's smile was razor sharp. A thumb drive full of accusations from an addict. The word of a nurse who stole from us. And now, she held up a legal document. I'm filing for emergency permission to end life support. By this time tomorrow, there won't be anyone left to save. James's monitors beeped steadily, mockingly. Liam looked at his phone. Another missed call from the hospital. His mother's time was running out, and now so was James's. You've both lost, Ivy said softly. The only question is, how much more you want to lose before you walk away? Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. The security cameras watched silently as Garrett slumped against the wall, the thumb drive falling from his trembling fingers. And somewhere in the mansion's maze of rooms, the truth lay hidden, waiting to be discovered before it was too late. The study where Garrett searched through old documents was cast in shadows, broken only by his phone's flashlight. He'd been clean for 3 days, his longest stretch in months. The purchase orders have to be here somewhere, he muttered, fingers trembling as he rifled through drawers. The chemicals she bought. A floorboard creaked behind him. He turned, but too late. Liam found him an hour later, sprawled across the study floor, an empty syringe beside him. His breathing was shallow, pulse weak. No, no, no. Liam checked his pupils. Garrett, wake up. Is something wrong? Ivy appeared in the doorway, concern perfectly painted on her face. Oh my, has he relapsed again? This wasn't a relapse. Liam held up the syringe. This was you. A serious accusation. She pulled out her phone. Itaibabi, one you'll have to explain to the police and the medical board. After all, you were his assigned caregiver tonight. 2 officers arrived within minutes, too quickly, as if they'd been waiting. Mr. Foster, one said, we need to discuss some financial irregularities we've discovered. Liam's heart sank as they outlined the evidence. His theft from the safe, suspicious transfers, all perfectly documented. And now, the officer continued, a patient under your care has overdosed. This is a setup. We'll need you to come with us. Ivy watched from the doorway as they led him out, her smile hidden behind a hand raised in mock distress. Wait, he called back. Check on James. She's planning to. Mr. Blackwell is receiving excellent care, the officer cut in. His daughter has already filed the paperwork to end his suffering legally. In the back of the police car, Liam watched the mansion disappear into the darkness. His phone buzzed. The hospital again. Your mother's asking for you, the nurse said. You should hurry. The interrogation room was cold, sterile. The detective pushed photos across the table. Bank statement, forged credentials, security footage of Liam at the safe. Quite a collection of evidence, he said. Miss Blackwell has been very thorough. She's going to kill her father, with witnesses present, legal documentation, a medical ethics board's approval. The detective shook his head. No, Mr. Foster, the only criminal here is you. Through the one-way glass, Liam caught a glimpse of Ivy speaking with someone in the hallway, her expression concerned, caring, the perfect grieving daughter. You have 24 hours, she mouthed, when no one was looking. Back at the mansion, Garrett lay in the hospital wing, his overdose being treated by doctors on Ivy's payroll. The machines beeped steadily, marking time as James Blackwell's life ticked away in the next room. And somewhere in the maze of evidence Ivy had crafted, a single thread waited to be pulled, one that would unravel everything, if only Liam could find it in time. The fluorescent lights of the police station buzzed as Liam made his final call. Mrs. Peterson, I need every document from James's office. Everything. She's watching, the housekeeper whispered. But, check the old groundskeeper's cottage. Behind the loose brick in the fireplace, released on bail he couldn't afford, Liam crept across the mansion grounds at midnight. The cottage was a shadow against shadows. Inside, his flashlight beam caught cobwebs and dust. Then the fireplace. Behind the brick, a manila envelope thick with papers. Movement at the window made him freeze. But it was Garrett, pale and unsteady, but alive. You shouldn't be up, Liam said. She didn't expect me to survive. Garrett's laugh was bitter. Miscalculated the dose. They spread the papers across the dusty floor. Purchase orders for chemical, bank transfers, photos from the day of the accident. Here, Garrett's hand shook as he held up a document. Dad's original will. He was leaving everything to charity. Everything. A twig snapped outside. They quickly packed up, but as they turned to leave, headlights swept across the cottage windows. The ethics committee had arrived early. Mr. Foster, Dr. Reynolds, head of the committee, checked his watch. You shouldn't be here. You don't understand. We understand you've been harassing this family with wild accusations while embezzling from them. He gestured to a police officer emerging from the shadows. Miss Blackwell has been quite clear about your instability. In James's room, Ivy was already preparing the final procedures. Her mask of grief was perfect as she spoke to the gathered doctors. My father would want peace, she said softly. Liam pushed through the crowd. Check his responses. He's conscious. He can communicate. Security, Ivy called. Wait! Garrett stumbled into the room, clutching the documents. You need to see. But Ivy was faster. A nurse, one of hers, was already approaching Garrett with a syringe. My brother is unfortunately still delirious, Ivy said smoothly. He needs rest. The police moved toward Liam. The ethics committee turned away. The machines beeped countdown time. And then, a twitch. James's finger moved. Not a spasm, not a reflex. Deliberate. Did you see that? Liam asked the nearest doctor. See what? But others had noticed too. A murmur went through the room. Ivy's mask slipped for just a moment. Proceed with the protocol, she ordered. Outside, storm clouds gathered again. Thunder rolled across the sky as the mansion held its breath, waiting to see which truth would emerge. Ivy's carefully constructed narrative, or the reality hidden behind years of lies. The clock struck midnight. In 12 hours, they would either save James Blackwell or watch him die. And somewhere in the mansion, the proof they needed was waiting to be found. The room was crowded as Dr. Reynolds began the end-of-life protocol. Rain lashed against the windows, punctuating the steady beep of monitors. Beginning sedation, the doctor announced. Stop! Garrett lurched forward, steadier now, clutching a phone. You need to see this first. Security! Ivy called again, but Garrett was already playing the video. The footage was grainy, a security camera from the garage on the day of the accident. A figure moved under James's car. The timestamp matched Mike Chen's records perfectly. That's not proof of anything, Ivy said, but her voice wavered. Keep watching. The figure emerged. Even in the poor quality, Ivy's face was unmistakable. You were angry? Garrett said. Dad told you about the will that morning. Turn it off. You couldn't stand that he was giving everything away, that your control was ending. The room had gone silent except for the monitors and the rain. I saw you do it, Garrett continued. I was getting high in the garage. You didn't notice me. I've carried that moment every day since. You're delusional. Am I? He pulled out more papers. These are the chemical orders, the brake fluid specification, your research on untraceable substance. Dr. Reynolds stepped forward. Miss Blackwell? This is ridiculous, but Ivy's perfect composure was cracking. My brother is an addict. Mr. Foster is a thief. You can't possibly… She stopped. Everyone had turned to look at James. His eyes were open. Not just open, focused, alert, looking directly at his daughter. Daddy? Ivy whispered, and for the first time, real emotion cracked through her voice. James's hand moved to the breathing tube. The doctor rushed forward to help remove it. Ivy, he rasped, his voice rough from disuse. Why? She backed away, reaching for her bag, for the documents everyone now knew were inside. Security, she called one last time, but even the guards were watching James. The money, he continued. It was always about the money. Ivy turned to run, but police, real police, not her paid ones, were already entering the room. Detective Chen, one said. Mike Chen is my brother. We've been building a case. As they led Ivy away, she looked back once at her father. In that moment, her mask finally shattered completely, revealing everything she'd hidden for so long. The storm outside began to ease. Dawn light crept through the windows as James Blackwell took his first unassisted breath in months, while his daughter disappeared into the darkness she'd created. The mansion churned with activity. Police photographers documented everything. Detectives gathered statements, and medical personnel hovered around James, who was growing stronger by the hour. In the study, Detective Chen spread photos across the desk. Your sister was meticulous, every poison carefully chosen, every dose calculated. She learned that from Dad, Garrett said quietly. The attention to detail, she just used it differently. Through the window they watched Ivy being escorted to a police car, her designer outfit incongruous with the handcuffs. The brake lines were just the beginning, Chen continued. When he survived, she had to improvise. Where did I go wrong? James's voice came from the doorway. He sat in a wheelchair, already insisting on being part of everything. What did I miss? It's not your fault, Blackwell, Liam said, but his phone buzzed again. The hospital, his mother, James noticed. Go, we'll finish this later. At the hospital, Liam found his mother awake, but barely. I'm sorry, he said. I tried to get the money. Mr. Foster, a nurse interrupted. There's a call for you from the Blackwell estate. James's voice was stronger now. Your mother's treatment has been paid for, in full. I can't… You saved my life. Let me save hers. Back at the mansion that evening, Liam found James in his study, reviewing documents. I should have seen it coming, James said. The signs were there. Her obsession with control, with the fortune. Dad, Garrett appeared in the doorway. They found the rest of her records, the offshore accounts, the bribes, everything. James nodded slowly. A Caretaker? And now they want my statement about pressing charges. She tried to kill you. Multiple times. She's still my daughter. James looked out at the setting sun. Where did that little girl go? The one who used to sit on my lap during business meeting, taking notes in her little notebook? A detective appeared with more questions. As they talked, Liam slipped away to confess his own crimes. The theft, the forged credentials. I know, James said simply. I knew before you did it. How? Because I would have done the same for my child. He smiled sadly. The difference is, you did it to save a life. Ivy did it to control one. Night fell over the mansion. Somewhere in a police station, Ivy sat in a cell. Her perfect world collapsed. And in a hospital across town, Liam's mother began her first round of treatment. While the Blackwell fortune finally did what James had always intended, it saved a life. 3 weeks later, James Blackwell walked into the county jail's visitation room, his steps still unsteady but determined. Ivy sat on the other side of the glass, her prison jumpsuit a stark contrast to her usual tailored suits. "You shouldn't have come," she said into the phone. I needed to understand." "Understand what?" "That your precious charity plans meant more than your own daughter." "Is that what you really think?" James leaned forward. "That money was meant to help people, like it's helping Liam's mother now." Ivy's composure cracked slightly. "How is she?" "Responding well to treatment. The same treatment you denied others by trying to keep the fortune. I was protecting our legacy." "No." James's voice was gentle. "You were protecting your control. There's a difference." Tears finally broke through Ivy's mask. "I spent my whole life trying to be perfect for you, to run the business, manage the estate, be the daughter you wanted. I never wanted perfect. I wanted you to be happy." The silence between them was heavy with decades of misunderstanding. "The DA's offering a deal," James said finally. "Community service, working with the foundation I'm establishing, using your skills to help people instead of control them." "Why would you trust me?" "Because you're my daughter. And because the little girl who used to follow me around with her notebook is still in there somewhere." Back at the mansion, Garrett sat with Liam in the garden, 6 months sober and clear-eyed. "Dad's turning the East Wing into a recovery center," he said, "for families who can't afford treatment. Your idea?" "Partly. Turns out helping others helps me too." He smiled. "Who knew?" In James's study, lawyers drew up paperwork for the new foundation. The fortune would go where it was meant to, helping people like Liam's mother, who was now in remission. "Mr. Foster," James handed him an envelope, "your new contract as head nurse of our medical facility. But my credentials are being properly earned. Your night school enrollment is covered." Liam opened the envelope with trembling hands. "Hey, I don't deserve this. You risked everything to save a life. That's exactly what this foundation is about." Through the window, they watched Garrett leading a group of new patients to the East Wing. Down the hall, construction crews transformed rooms into treatment centers, and in a jail cell across town, Ivy Blackwell began writing in a notebook again, planning not for control, but for redemption. 1 year later, the Blackwell Foundation's grand opening drew crowds from across the state. The mansion's gates, once symbols of exclusion, stood open to all. James cut the ribbon with steady hands, Garrett beside him. "Today, we stop hoarding wealth and start sharing hope." In the East Wing, Liam, now fully certified, led tours of the medical facility. His mother, healthy and glowing, volunteered at the front desk. "Hey, this used to be my room," Garrett told a group of recovering addicts. "Now it's where we hold group therapy." Funny how things change. The security cameras remained, but now they watched over healing instead of secret. In the garden, former patients tended vegetables for the foundation's kitchen. Ivy arrived last, escorted by her parole officer. Her community service badge caught the sunlight as she walked through her old home, now transformed. "Hey, Miss Blackwell," a young girl approached her. "Mom says you're the one who helped with her treatment plan." Ivy knelt down. "How is she doing?" "Cancer-free. Like Liam's mom." Something shifted in Ivy's expression, the last piece of her old self falling away. In the main hall, James gathered everyone for the foundation's first board meeting. Ivy sat quietly in the back, taking notes in her notebook. "Hi. Last year," James began, "this fortune almost destroyed my family. Today, it saves others." Garrett shared recovery statistics. Liam presented medical success rates. And when it was her turn, Ivy stood with unexpected humility. "I once used my skills to control and harm," she said. "Now they help create treatment protocols that work. Real legacy isn't about keeping wealth. It's about using it wisely." Later, in the garden, the Blackwell family shared their first peaceful dinner in years. Liam joined them, no longer an outsider, but family. "To new beginnings," James raised his glass. Ivy met his eyes. "To forgiveness, to healing," Garrett added. Above them, stars emerged in the clearing sky. The mansion's lights glowed warmly, beckoning other lost souls toward hope. Inside, Liam's mother answered phones, directing new patients to available beds. And in James's old room, now a children's ward, the monitors beeped steadily, not counting down to an end, but marking time toward new beginning. Ivy opened her notebook one last time that night, but instead of schemes and calculations, she wrote, "Today, I finally understood what Dad meant. True power isn't in controlling life, but in nurturing it. And true wealth isn't what you keep, but what you give away. The mansion settled into darkness, its shadows now holding not secrets, but promise. And somewhere in the night, another family in crisis discovered the Blackwell Foundation's number, beginning their own journey toward healing.